Hello, Mr. Magpie. Hello lovely people, and welcome to the March 2019 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name is Leslie, and this is a podcast about knitting, crochet, all the yarn crafts, recorded on the south coast of England. Thank you so much for being here, whether you're a new viewer or returning one. Really appreciate you spending time here, so thank you very much. Just a bit of kind of admin for those who don't know me. The reason why, sorry, I'm stop messing with my hair. The reason why it's called the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast, when I have a lot of yarn, is that I very rarely buy enough to make a whole garment with the same colour. And it became a bit of a standing joke at the knitting group that I go to, because I'd turn up with something with some extra stripes. I'd be saying, well, I didn't have quite enough yarn to do. So that was kind of how the name began. I do have 3 cupboards of yarn and some boxes, and my plan is to get everything into 2 cupboards. I don't know how long that's going to take, because as you'll see in the podcast this month, people very kindly give me stuff and I'm very grateful for it. But that's the plan, and for that reason, with the exception of last month when I went to Unravel, I haven't bought yarn since November 2017, and the plan is not to buy any yarn this year. The only other caveat I allowed myself at the beginning of the year, if there is another Tits Out collective, I may well have a skein of that, because I just think the colours in it are phenomenal, but we'll see on that one. So that's the reason for the title. In terms of format, I record throughout the month in various places. Most of it's here in my office, which is where one of my yarn lives, but also in the car while I'm out at work, just various kind of places. So you'll see me in various states of awakeness, tidiness, smartness. That's kind of how life is with me, and just showing you the things I've been working on. So again, welcome, thank you for being here. And as they used to say in the Mickey Rooney movies, on with the show. Well, it's been over a year in the making, but I'm wearing my latest finished object. And I shall stand to give you a bit of feel. I've also taken some footage of me being a model, which I shall put in here. So that means I've got the miserable sin. So as we can see, this is a subtle, understated little number. Actually, it's not too colourful for me. It's not bad at all. So what is it I'm wearing, you may well ask? It is a drops pattern. Now, I've been going at this so long that when I first started, it only had a number, and it was the drops 112-36. It now has a number of Ocean Shore. And as it's by Drops Design, if all the rumours are true, my next question should be, but I wonder who designed it originally? Allegedly. However, moving on. So as you can see, basically it's constructed in 2 parts. One part runs from the sleeve, up the sleeve, and then the whole body. And the other one starts at the front and goes the other way, and you increase for the sleeve as you need it. So in theory, just 2 parts. I have modified it slightly. The sleeves were a bit flappy for me, so I wanted to put a bit of a cuff in to kind of give it a bit of weight here, so they weren't quite so, I mean they're still quite big, but I didn't want them to be quite so flappy. So I just picked up around the cuff on both sides, did a few of the stripe repeats and folded over, and I've caught it in with a little stitch. Also, I've added more of a shawl collar. There is a bit of a shawl shape to it, but again I picked up stitches and just worked some of the stripe repeats to give it a bit more. It felt a bit sort of uneven. The whole thing should be edged, excuse the dog, with a crochet stitch. Because I was finishing on the coloured stripes, I didn't bother, I just carried on. I just left it with the coloured edging, and then on the hem I just did double crochet, so single crochet US term, just to give a uniformity to the edge, because obviously this side you've got the horizontal stripes and this side you have the vertical, so you're ending up with different edges. So I just wanted to make it the same all the way. I did start doing that in the colour, but it felt a little too bright, so I went with the grey. So the yarns. The grey, I'm not sure I can tell you what it is, because it was a stonking great cone of light fingering grey boucle, which I think is acrylic. Sorry to not be more specific. It's quite a fine weight. Like I say, it's a light fingering, so in UK terminology, somewhere between a 3-ply and a 4-ply. The colour is Noro Crayon Sock. And you may be looking at this thinking, Les, you've done it again. You've had enough yarn. Well, I haven't. There are actually 2 different colourways of Noro in this, and all the details will be on my Ravelry project page, so you can see anything that you need there. But yeah, I ran out, I knew I would, I ran out of one ball of Noro and then picked up another. So you'll notice on this side you have a little bit of yellow, and on this side you have a lot of yellow. So there is a difference, but because they're a similar intensity of colour, it kind of works. In terms of quantities, and I made the largest size, I used 165 grams of Noro, so that's just under 700 metres. And the grey I've estimated, because it's 4 rows of grey for every 2 rows of Noro, I've estimated it's double that quantity, so just under 1400 metres of the boucle. And I'm really happy with how it's turned out. It's a nice weight, it's quite light. Very simple to make because it is just garter stitch. The only fiddling you've got to do is with the shaping. Like I say, with this piece you're then increasing for the sleeve. Has been quite a slow make, but that's partly because this is the piece that I've been knitting on whilst checking things on my computer. And if you saw my Vlogmas, you saw me doing that. And also I showed you this piece before because I did make a bit of a mistake and ended up with the wrong side matching. I basically was working it left side as if it were right, or the other way around. So yeah, fairly straightforward, quite a nice pattern to work with, and a good useful garment. The way I discovered this pattern is the way I discovered a lot of patterns. I had an idea for the stripes of the grey and the colour. I did a swatch. I had a look on Ravelry to see what would match the gauge of the swatch and went from there. So this is it. This is my ocean shawl. Nothing very oceany about it. It's more like candy colours. But I'm very happy, and it's one that I think I'll use a lot. So you'll probably see this quite often in future podcasts. I've been thinking, and that's noteworthy in itself, I've been thinking about the haul I got at Unravel, and it was a lovely collection of yarn. Thank you to everyone who's come back and said they like the colours. And the question may well be reasonably asked, why didn't you buy a sweater quantity, Les? You bought enough for a sweater, but why not a sweater quantity in all one colour or colourway? And it is a reasonable question, and of course that option was open to me. But I think there are 2 things at play here. The first one is probably financial. For me to make a sweater for myself out of 4-ply or fingering weight is usually over 2,000 metres of yarn. So we're talking sort of 5 skeins plus of hand-dyed. And if it's, 25 quid a skein, that's a lot of money on a sweater. And I know there's a logic fail in this, because if I end up using 5 skeins of hand-dyed and I do a fade or blocks or something, the end result is exactly the same as if I'd bought 5 in the same colourway. There's a difference psychologically between spending, 125, £150 on a sweater's worth of yarn and putting yarn in my stash for me then to use later. This isn't a logical thing. Maybe it is. It's more emotional. I think also if I were to buy a sweater quantity of hand-dyed yarn, I would be frightened to use it, because having invested that much in the yarn, I don't know how long I would spend looking for the perfect pattern to do it justice, and then worrying about the perfect sizing and the perfect cast on, and I think the pleasure would go out of it somewhat. So that's the kind of financial reason why. And I think also there's a bit to do with my personality, in that there were so many lovely things there. I was trying to miss out as little as possible. And it's a bit like when you go to a restaurant, particularly a Thai restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, where you get offered the mixed starter option. So there's a group of you and you can have the crab cakes or you can have the mixed starters. I will always prefer the mixed starters. I would rather try a bite of something, a bite of a lot of different things, than have a lot of one thing. So I think there's that element to it as well. But it was quite a revealing thought process, because here I was in a situation I haven't been in for a very long time, where I'd saved some money, so I could have conceivably bought a sweater quantity of beautiful yarn in the same colourway, and chose not to. I absolutely resisted it, and the thought of doing it was actually quite anxious is too strong a word, but it was certainly not comfortable for me to think of spending that much and choosing just one colour and making just one sweater with that quantity of yarn. So it's been quite a revealing process going to unravel. It's also a huge amount of fun, and I bought lots of lovely yarn. But it really made me think about my creative process, if that doesn't sound too pretentious or precocious. And the other thing that's kind of come up this year with doing the make-along with Barbara, which is a use your stash make-along, I really like going to my stash and seeing what I've got and using what I have, rather than a kind of world your oyster, go and buy whatever colour, whatever weight, whatever type of fibre. I find that too much choice and it freezes me. Whereas seeing a pattern that I really like and then seeing if I can make it work with what I have, or thinking about the adaptations I could make to make it work, I find that a very exciting part of the process. It's almost too easy to go and get, 8 balls of yarn and just knit a sweater. And this is by no means a criticism of people who do that, because a lot of the garments that I really like, when I see the patterns, are single colour, single yarn items.
And I think, oh, I'd like to make that, but I can't do it because I'd have to put a stripe in or something. And for some patterns that will work, and for some it won't. So for people who do that, fab. That's just kind of not how my brain works. So it's been quite an interesting thought process as a result of going to a yarn festival and having a budget to spend. So fun in itself and quite thought-provoking? I'm making up words now. Quite thought-provoking too.
Hello lovely people, firstly apologies, I'm having a very bad hair day today. But, you know, expectations on my personal appearance probably not that high, so I'm not going to worry about it. Now I showed you earlier the grey and colourful stripe cardigan that I'd finished. What I didn't show you was this is how much grey I've got left. So there's probably enough for about another 4 sweaters. And yes, I would have had enough to do it all in the same colour, but that would have been too dull. I needed the stripes to break it up in appearance and in knitting. So this, I think, it is a very fine yarn. I think this is probably going to be a crochet project, but we shall see. And talking of crochet projects, that sounds like a local radio link there. Oh yes indeedy, Radio Local. I have a finished crochet project because I finished something, so I then had to start 2 things. I know, it's pathetic. But one of them I've already finished. It was a super quick make, and it is this fabulous shawl, which is the Puppy Love Shawl by Kaliesha Ryan, who is Natiratani across social media. And I've shown you both sides here because one of the great features of this is crochet brioche. So you can see we've got lilac here, we've got blue here, it's the same stripe. Let me move that in close. So there's the lilac, and there's the blue. And it is just a great make. I mean, I did this in probably just over a week. And as you can see, it's got a fair old wingspan. It's longer than my arms, and I'm 5'5", so if wingspan is the equivalent of your height, it's about 6 feet across. The original pattern was designed for worsted weight yarn, and I was working in double crochet weight yarn, so I adapted slightly in a number of ways, as is my wont. I went down a hook size. Now in hindsight, that probably wasn't necessary, and it would have made it a drapier shawl had I stuck with the original hook size. So if I were to make another, I might stick with the DK weight yarn but go bigger hook size. Having said that, I mean, this drapes quite nicely anyway, but that was one of the adaptations I made. Because I was working in a finer yarn and smaller hook, I also added some extra rows. So you've got one section of brioche and the rest of these sections of mesh and just regular UK treble, US double crochets. So I just added some more of those just to make it a little bit bigger because I'd gone smaller on my yarn and hook. Now Kaliesha does recommend blocking it aggressively because in her experience the mesh pulls in, the brioche pulls in. Splendid, Miss Moneypenny. The brioche pulls in. I didn't find that. I found it was the mesh that actually pulled in, but gave it a damn good blocking. Pinned it out, made it wet. As you can see, lovely straight edges. So it's come up to size beautifully and has straightened out. So I couldn't be happier with this. It was quick. It had bits in it that were plain enough to not get too bogged down, but bits in it that were interested to not get bored. A really lovely make. So the yarns, all from Stash, and people on Instagram have kindly commented on the great colour combination. And these were nearly all picked by himself in his capacity as yarn enabler. So he has a very good eye. He's not completely useless, I'll keep him. Yeah, the boy did good. I mean, he knows the colours I like, but the boy did good. So, to work, let's start at the very beginning. So this pink, it's a variegated pink here. Oh, the sun's coming right in, so you're not going to see that terribly well. Hopefully you can see it better if I hold it back a little. This is Hedgehog Fibres. I've written it down, otherwise I'll forget. Oh, it's called Merino DK. There you go, that's tricky, isn't it? And the colourway is called Hush. So that's Hedgehog Fibres, Merino DK Hush. The cream colour, I'm not sure what that is. Judging by the feel of it, I am pretty sure it's merino. I think it was something I bought to do a swatch once for a pattern I was putting together, and I think it's what's left of it. Welcome to the vague news. Sorry I don't have any more details, but it's a DK weight merino as far as I can tell. Now the next three, so the pale blue here, the darker blue, and the lilac that you can see on the other side of the brioche. They are all Jenny Watson merino, so again it's a DK weight, 100% merino. She has colourway numbers rather than names, so the pale blue is number 11, the lilac is number 15, and the darker blue is number 17. So that's that. And you can see I put a few more colours in. Then there was a bit of alpaca. That's the only bit on this shawl that's not merino. That was some DK alpaca that I had in the stash. So I just did a couple of rows of the mesh. More of the cream. And then we get on to Stranded Dye Works. It's her Castaway. Now she doesn't have names anymore, so it's Merino DK. I mean, it's 100% Merino DK. And this was from the lovely Amy. Because she comes to our knitting group and we love her, well, this isn't because, she's just lovely, and she sometimes brings along odd skeins and balls that she's got. So these might be one of a kind that perhaps she's only got one left, doesn't want to put in the shop if she feels they're not good enough standard. I mean, I can look at her stuff and think it's fabulous, but she'll say no, it's not good enough for the shop. So she brings them along and we can help ourselves. So I initially said thank you very much to this to go with some other Castaway that I've got of hers, but it occurred to me that it would go beautifully in this shawl, and it did. So those are the yarns. Like I say, apart from that little band of alpaca in the middle here, it's all 100% merino, so it is lovely and squishy and soft, and oh my goodness. The edging on the sort of the side edges as you're working it from the start point out, I did US term double crochet, UK term single crochet. On the long edges I did US term double crochet, UK term treble crochet. I hope I'm getting these the right way around, but if you look at the stitches and you crochet, you'll know what I'm doing. And then I finished it all as suggested by Kaliesha with a crab stitch, or reverse single crochet she calls it. So that's working what I would call a double crochet. Oh, we need to get this sorted out. But working that stitch, but instead of going clockwise, going anti-clockwise. So that then gives you this nice sort of nubby texture. I hope you can see there. Sorry, this sun is going crazy. It's lovely to have the sun, but I'm not sure it's being helpful. I'm not sure me putting my hand there is being helpful either. So yes, to recap, the Puppy Love Shawl by Kaliesha Ryan. It is just super gorgeous. Mine's in a DK weight. I will not be surprised if I make another one of these at some point, because it is just a lot of fun to do. The crochet brioche is very straightforward. It's very well described in the pattern, so it's very clear what to do. It's a little bit slower than the other stuff because of working with two colours, but I've not yet knitted brioche. That's kind of one of my next plans. Another cast on that I shouldn't really be doing, but hey ho. I've been told that's kind of a bit slower for the same reason that you're working with the two colours. You know, it's not just completely brainless, but it's straightforward, and it's something you get into a really easy rhythm with. Let me just check I've said everything on my notes. Goodness me, I have, yes. So I will link to it in the description, and It's one of those patterns that looks more complicated than it is. And some people have said to me, oh, I can only do granny squares. Well, if you can do granny squares, you can do this. It's straightforward, but it's been written so that it looks far more complicated. And it's just a really super shawl. Not sure what else I've got to say, except thank you very much, Kaliesha, for publishing the pattern. Now, one thing I forgot to say about Kaliesha of the Puppy Love Shawl is that she is also a podcaster. She produces the I knew I was going to struggle with that. The Quirky Monday Craft Cast. And yes, so she is on YouTube, and she does stuff other than yarn craft. Predominantly it's crochet and a bit of knitting, but she also does painting and all sorts of things. So she's well worth a look. She has 2 gorgeous rescue dogs, and that's the reason why she called her shawl the Puppy Love, because of her love for the dogs that she rescued. So that's a good one to watch. I've also been watching recently the But I'm Knitting podcast, which is Ramona in Toronto, and she's podcasting weekly, just showing you what she's making. She's just finished the Andrea Mowry fade sweater, which looks really good. And the other one that I found a couple of episodes ago, and this was thanks to Chevy's of Chevy Rail, so thank you, Chevy. This is Angie B, who is the knitter next door, and if you like a slightly dry British sense of humour, I would recommend her. I really like her. She's got a lot of good stuff going on. She's also annoyingly talented. She knits beautifully. She has been weaving for a few months and produces this stuff which is just looks like she's been doing it for years. Spinning, again, producing stuff that just looks so polished and finished when she hasn't been doing it that long. So I'll be honest with you, I am going off for a bit. I'm joking. She looks like really good fun. So that's the knitter next door, Angie B. She's from Nottinghamshire. She's from Mansfield in Nottingham. So another good podcast to watch. Now, I have been given some more yarn because obviously that's what happens, and I'm really not complaining. I'm very grateful. Kellyanne, who is local to me, she's also one of the leaders of the drumming groups, the drumming group that I belong to, and she's the presenter of the Yarn Tales by the Sea podcast. Had been having a bit of sort out of her yarn, and she had some that she'd tried and just didn't get on with, just didn't like it. And given how much pink I bought at last month's Unravel, she thought of me. Because look at that colour. Is that not fabulous? Now, I was wondering what to do with my grey. Hello. I think these two would look amazing. Obviously, I need to swatch very carefully because we're dealing with very different weights of yarn. This is a double knitting weight. This is not. This is light fingering. So I'll need to work it at least double, possibly even 3 strands together, and if that's the case I would probably do a Navajo ply while I'm knitting, but I just think the 2 of these together would be great. And I've seen a pattern on Ravelry and I'm trying to think what it is, but basically it's kind of one colour, another further down, and then stripes between, and I just think these 2 together could look amazing. So thank you, Kellyanne. She gave me 4 of these. It's King Cole Smooth, as you can see, and it is incredibly soft. It's 100% acrylic, and it is just so soft. And when she gave it to me, I thought, I've seen this before, I've used this stuff before, and I couldn't place what it was. But it was this, which was an Ipod case that I made for Let's Knit magazine, and I've realised, looking at my notes, back in 2012. So who'd have thought it? So yes, this was, so this is what it looks like crocheted up. This pattern is not yet on Ravelry, but I will put it on there. I don't know why it's not, but I will put it on. It's just a front and back post crochet pattern for an iPad. So That be that. Of course, iPods are now a completely different size to what they were in 2012, but if you like this pattern, you can see it on there. So that's that, and thank you again, Kellyanne. Now, it did make me stop and think about yarns I had in my stash and I had some sock yarn that I was never going to use. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, just not my colours. I think I bought it on a bit of a yarn fume high at a show some years ago. Kellyanne does socks, she does them for her other half and for herself, so that's going in her direction. So this isn't pure acquisition, it's become a trade, so that's lovely. Also, I've been given a pattern, and thank you very much to Marianne, who on Ravelry Kringle, sorry, having trouble with my words today, obviously. And this is the Jamie's Shawl pattern. I'll put a colour picture in here. So thank you so much for that, because I said this is going to be the year of the shawl, and having finished the Puppy Love, I do want to start another. So this is the next one I'll be starting, so thank you so much. And I think I'm going to make this out of some Norro that Claire from Ferret and Gibbon podcast gave me. Again, it was stuff that she'd sort of tried some stuff with, had unpicked, wasn't working for her, gave it to me, and I think this would look great in that Norro. It's a double knitting weight pattern. Yeah, pattern for a double knitting weight yarn, and it's double knitting weight Norro that she gave me, so that is perfect. Talking of double knitting weight, one moment. Bit of a Wayne's World homage there. When you see me crocheting stuff in the car this year, I am mostly making cat blankets for a local rescue centre, and here's one that I finished. So it's corner to corner crochet, double knitting weight scraps, and yeah, I don't know what else to say about it really. I would even try and say that I tried to be thematic with the colours, but obviously that went horribly wrong halfway through because I just grabbed what was ever in the box. So this will be donated to the local cat rescue centre. Right, lovely people. Well, first of all, apologies for the bruise here. As you may remember, I said I was having a wisdom tooth out under a general anaesthetic, and that happened on Monday. So this is the bruise. It's not too sore. It's not stopped me talking, funnily enough. So yes, it's looking a bit look like I've been in a fight, but apart from that, we're all good. So whilst I was at the hospital on Monday, I made a scarf. You may remember last year I inherited a lot of yarn from a friend who had sadly died, and I've been in a bit of stasis with that yarn. I've got ideas of what I want to do, but it's now gone past the anniversary since she died, and I thought I need to extract my digit basically and pull my finger out, actually do something. Now there are some family members that I'm going to make some things for, and I'm probably going to weave for them. But also there are 3 friends. I mustn't say too much because there'll be spoilers. But one of the friends has a birthday coming up, and she will have this scarf. So I made this whilst I was in hospital on Monday. I'm on Instagram and I suddenly went into a panic. So I was like, I've run out of yarn, oh my goodness. And what I did is I used up all of the white mohair. So I decided to make an edge, make a trim with the lace weight. So what we're working with here, the white is Debbie Bliss Angel in a colour that I think may be called Stone. It's a very sort of neutral colour. And then it was Rowan Lace. And I'm going to pause this for a second to give you the yarn makeups. So the Debbie Bliss Angel is a merino silk, and it's 25 grams for 200 metres, and this was 1 ball. I also have 1 ball of Rowan fine lace, and that is 80% baby Suri alpaca, excuse me, sorry, and 20% fine merino wool. So it's a lovely purple colour, and this is what I've got left. And yes, I could have made a longer scarf, but I really wanted these to be trim rather than half the scarf, if you see what I mean. I wanted it very much to look like an intended edging rather than just jigsawing things together because of what yarn I had, even though that is probably what I was doing. So yes, it's a very simple scarf, 2 strands, a strand each of the lace and the mohair together. Give it this lovely grey effect, although it is actually purple and white. Hopefully you can see that. And then the purple edge. I think I used a 4.5mm hook or a 4mm, and just a very simple, you can see it in this pattern, a very simple shell and UK treble, US double crochet stitches. So very simple and straightforward. Made it whilst I was at hospital, finished it when I got home. So this will be a gift for one of the friends, and by the time this podcast goes up she'll have had her birthday, so I hope she likes it. If not, I'm sure she'll find something useful to do with it. Now, my father took me to the hospital on Monday because the beloved was in Glasgow. Yes, everyone else is in Edinburgh this weekend for EYF. Husband was in Glasgow, or Glasgow to people who don't try and do a really bad Scottish accent, last weekend for some concerts. And while there, bearing in mind he'd not long come back from Orlando and brought me back no yarn, may I say, I did point out to him where there were some yarn shops in Glasgow, and he found the Yarn Cafe. And you can tell it as a cafe because he bought a mug. So hopefully you can see that okay. Shush, I'm counting. I think there's also a badge, a pin of some description. He hasn't found that from the bottom of his suitcase yet, and it's not somewhere I want to go exploring. But he found me some yarn as well. He is a dear sweet enabler. So he got me 2 balls of West Yorkshire Spinners Colour Lab. Now I think this is a fairly new yarn, certainly judging by its Ravelry listing, not many projects yet, but this is a DK weight, 100% wool, reared, sheared and spun in Britain, made in Yorkshire. Don't think it's machine washable, not that it matters. So there's that lovely kind of rainbow colour, and the other ball he got me were these shades of blues and greens. Hopefully that's showing up relatively accurate. It's kind of pale blues into teal into blue. So yeah, so that's Colour Lab by West Yorkshire Spinners. And he also got me this skein of fabulousness, and that colour's showing up pretty well. This is by Mothy and the Squid, and let me just show you the label. Is it going to focus? Yes it does. So 75% BFL, 25% nylon, and what I don't know if the colour will show, I'm trying to get it to focus. How's that? It's this beautiful, you know, Barney the dinosaur purple, but you can see there it's got specks of blue as well. So it's got these flecks of colour which just make it absolutely stunning. So he was very kind, bless him. So yeah, he was home when I got home from the hospital and presented me with yarn, so all was good. So, so yeah, so Mothy and the Squid, Stubby Squid, BFL nylon mix. Really lovely colour. Feels, it's not a kind of super soft yarn, it does have a sort of certain hardiness to it, which is sock yarn you would want. So really loving that, and just those colours with those flecks of blue are amazing. Because I've not been working this week, I've been working on lots of projects. So as well as finishing the scarf, I've got a lot of other stuff on the go. I think I'm going to wait until I record next week's section and give you a kind of an update on the projects that I've got going then, as well as doing the draw for the first quarter of the year-long knit-along / crochet-along / make-along. So just a reminder, this is co-hosted with the lovely Barbara from the Flame and Fibre podcast, and it's the Stash Cal 2019 So using up your stash. Only rules are the stash had to be in your possession at the end of last year. Project had to be started 1st of January or later. Some great finished objects coming up. Everything is on Ravelry, so there's a finished object thread on both the Not Quite Enough Yarn group and the Flame and Fibre group, and both groups also have a chatter thread, and we'll be making draws from those threads for prizes. Fascinated to see the stuff that's in there. Some beautiful projects being made, so thank you so much for taking part. Hope you're enjoying it. People seem to be kind of embracing the spirit of it. Glad to have a reason to go stash shopping. So looking forward to drawing some prizes next week. Everything is on Ravelry and on YouTube, so whereas with previous giveaways that I've done, I've pulled stuff out of the hat and got in touch with people, this is more like a conventional knit along and giveaway, in that when I call out your name, I need you to contact me on Ravelry with a mailing address so that I can post stuff to you, or let me have details if it's a pattern giveaway. So I'll be doing that next week, and I don't know why I'm saying next week, because you'll be watching this probably in one hit and it'll be like 2 minutes time, but it'll be next week and this bruise will have gone down. So yeah, looking forward to making the first draw and giving the first prizes away, because we've got some lovely things. Right, my lovelies, now this month's podcast has gone up a day early, and the reason for that is the last weekend of this month I am spending at a retreat. This is a mindfulness meditation type retreat, a relaxation weekend. Those of you who saw my vlog of the stuff I got up to in September last year will know that I went to a mindfulness retreat, and that was in Scotland, a long way from where I live, and it took me all day to get there and was quite stressful in the journeys. This one, half an hour from where I live, so much easier, very civilised. The person who runs it is a friend of mine. I met her through her being my teacher, but we've become friends. And as part of the course, because this is very much about relaxation rather than kind of full on get to the bottom of your soul through meditation type stuff, there is an opportunity for crafting. And she said, you know, people want to bring a book. It's very much about relaxation, recharging batteries as the seasons turn. So I have a project which has reached a stage which would be really good to take with me. Now, I nearly got into trouble because of this project at Knit Night this week, because one of the members of the group was saying that she's not that keen on crocheted sweaters, just the kind of bog standard worked in trebles crocheted sweaters. And I said, well, that's because you haven't seen my Janelle. And it made it sound a bit like, hello darling, do you want to see my Janelle? Which really was not what I was meaning at all. So this is the Janelle by Dora Orenstein. And I have the book of this, but I always print out the patterns so that I can write all over them. So this is Janelle, and it's a crochet jacket, open fronted, and the shape is such that it increases from the armpits down. So you get a bit of overlap here and a bit of drape at the sides. It's worked in linked trebles. And it was the first project I'd done using linked trebles, so that was a good exercise for me. And hopefully this will show up nicely. And you can see that the linked trebles, someone's described them as Tunisian crochet worked at 90 degrees, which is about right, because you work them in a very similar way. Now this would normally create a very dense fabric, but the way that Dora Orenstein gets around this and creates a lovely drapey item is that she uses a much larger hook than you would expect for the item. So it's a 4-ply fingering weight yarn, but with a 5.5mm hook, which I think is an I in US sizing. So it's creating a much drapier, much softer fabric. The yarn I'm using is Norro. This was some Norro that I got when a local yarn shop closed a couple of years ago. and this is Silk Garden sock yarn. So it's 40% lamb's wool, 25% silk, 25% nylon and 10% kid mohair. And as you can see, for Noro and for me, quite muted, sensible colours. But they had a lot of it and it was vastly reduced. I couldn't stop myself. I think I have shown you this before, and I think that's where I was last time, so I hadn't got very far. But I have now done both sleeves. I quite often, when I'm making items, don't leave the sleeves till last. I like to get them done. This is usually because I'm running out of yarn, and I know that if the sleeves are done, then whatever I've got left, I can just keep working until we're done. So I run out of yarn, basically. So this is Janelle so far. Now it actually looks, the way the colours have fallen, is if I'm working two different balls of yarn, because this side looks an awful lot lighter than this side, but that's just the way it works. So yes, I've got the sleeves done, I've split for the sleeves, and you can see them there. So what I've got left to do, if I were to follow the pattern exactly, all I've got left to do is just keep working down the body until I get to the length required. Now, have you ever known me follow a pattern exactly? Come on, really? Have you? No. When I first was looking for patterns on Ravelry and first saw this one, someone who has made the project has made it with a border and put a button at the neck, and I like that idea. That's going to make it an awful lot neater here, and for me easier to wear. It is quite a drapey garment. I do have very round shoulders, so it's just going to fall off all the time unless I have some kind of cardigan clip or a button or some kind of fastening here. So that's what I'm going to do. I also just think it finishes it off nicely, and given that we have got this contrasting colour just because of the way the colours are falling as I work the stitches, it will give an edge to it. It will kind of pull everything together. So that's Janelle so far, and here's the back of it. Again, so far. So I've worked the yoke. What I did was I kept going, after splitting for the sleeves, I kept going until I finished the ball of yarn I was working on, which is why we have a couple of rows here. And now I just keep working down. The reason why this will be a good project for my retreat is mainly because I have to take my glasses off to crochet. As you see, when I'm looking at ball bands, I'm of the age where I do a lot of this business to read stuff. And crochet, particularly linked crochet, because you're working into parts of the stitches, I need to take my glasses off or look over them. So it's a little bit antisocial, but we're on a silent retreat. So we're supposed to be in our own little space, so that's really good. Also, I find this quite slow in comparison with a lot of crochet work. Just the way the stitches are formed, it's a slower process. So the fact that this is a mindful weekend, mindful exercise, I can just kind of concentrate on the stitches, feel of the yarn, all of the things that you're meant to do, and just keep working through without feeling any pressure to get something done or finished or all of that. I don't know how much time is allowed for crafting on this retreat. It might be, you know, half an hour, and I'm going to come home disappointed that I haven't done much, but we shall see. But it just struck me as a good project to take with me. I can shut myself in a little kind of yarny bubble, do the mindful thing, work on the cardigan. So that's the plan. One other shocking thing about this yarn is I have enough of the same colour for the whole item. And I know that's not what you're here for. But, you know, I like to mix things up a bit. I like to go a bit crazy. So everything will be in the same yarn. I do have quite enough yarn, but it really doesn't look like it because of the way these colours are falling. So we shall see how it goes when it's finished. I'm hoping it will all come together, because at the moment it's looking kind of light this side, dark this side. that should kind of even itself out. It'll have a slightly mosaic-y effect, I think, rather than the obvious stripes, but it'll be a useful item. It's quite a long line jacket, and I'm liking the way it's going so far. So you will see it when it's done or further done. And although I don't do a lot about project bags, I should probably tell you about the bag that I keep this in. This was made for me by my sister-in-law out of a pair of my nephew's jeans. It's fully lined. It is actually reversible because it's a sort of box-shaped bag at the bottom, and it is fully reversible. I have used it with the floral fabric on the outside. But it's incredibly hard wearing. It's a simple sort of, what do you call that, a bucket shape, I don't know, just with handles. It hasn't got any pockets or drawstrings or anything like that. But it is a useful size. My only fear is I have a nephew walking around somewhere with his backside hanging out of his trousers. I hope it's warmer where he is. Right, all you lovely people, I've got a couple of works in progress, and then it's time for the first of the draws for the Stash Cal craft along. So I'm very excited about that. Hopefully you are too. If you're not excited about the draw, I hope you're enjoying the craft along. And even if you're not taking part, if you've got 5 minutes, I really would make a point of going through the finished objects. Some of the projects are just stunning. So thank you to everyone for embracing this so warmly and for taking part. That really is very, very good of you, and it's been lovely to see, so thank you. Now the first of the works in progress I mentioned earlier, so I'm getting a muddle here, the Jamie Shawl by Cozy Up Knits that I was very kindly given the pattern, and I've been working on it, and it's getting to the point where it's getting a bit long for my needle, so I'll show you kind of half of it because otherwise it just looks a bit kind of baggy. I'm making it in Noro Sock Garden Light, so that's a DK weight yarn. I'm using 4mm needles. I don't swatch for shawls. So yeah, Noro Silk Garden Light. And this is where we're at so far. So there is a texture pattern, which hopefully you can see. Let me get that focus. Some garter stitch rows, some eyelets, which will block out beautifully. Some small bobbles. And then we're on to another row of eyelets. More garter stitch, more of the texture, and an I-cord bind off. I'm going to see how I'm doing for yarn. I may just do a regular bind off rather than the I-cord one if I feel that I'm not going to have enough yarn for that. But this is where we're at so far. It's a lovely pattern to work on. I don't very often work on top-down shawls. This one, for example, was a bottom-up. This is based on the Leftovers Faroese shawl, and I'll put the details in the description below. And the reason why I'm very fond of Faroese shawls is that you start when the rows are the biggest, when you're most enthusiastic, and they get smaller as you go up and do the decreases. However, this designer obviously is similar to me in that she wants that variety. So that's why there are so many different bits of texture, and just when you're getting to the point in a section where you're thinking, really, another row of this, then it changes. So I'm very much enjoying this. It is slowing down now because the rows are getting bigger, but I'm very much enjoying this. So that's the Jamie Shawl from Cozy Up Knits. My other project is a sweater, and it is the Leaps and Bounds, and I'll put a picture here. Now I fear I'm going to mispronounce the designer's name. I looked at the name and thought Jimenez, like I think there's a golfer called Jimenez, that's a surname. But I'm wondering if it should be Jimenez. The designer's surname is Joseph, and Jimenez Joseph sounds, you know, has a nice alliteration to it. So apologies for mispronouncing that. Please someone correct me if you know the proper pronunciation. But it's the Leaps and Bounds sweater. And again, I'll zoom this in so you get a bit of detail. So you've got these stripes here, cable here, the colours join using intarsia. and it's just a really nice pattern to work. Now I knew that I wouldn't have quite enough yarn, so I've got a few rows here of a contrast yarn, and this contrast is, where have I put my labels? So the contrast at the bottom, the variegated, sorry that's curling up a bit at the moment, is from Ducky Darlings, and excuse me while I just retrieve the label. So this is from Ducky Darlings Yarns, and it's her Superwash 80/20 Merino Bamboo DK in the colourway Fusion. So that's that there. The paler of the two colours is Lana Stop Extra Merino, which is 52% wool, 48% acrylic mix. And the darker pink is Sublime, I'm getting a right old pickle here, aren't I? Sorry. Sublime, and that's their Cash Merino Silk DK. So that is, where's it gone? 75% extra fine merino, 20% silk, 5% cashmere. So those are my yarns. Yes, I'm mixing fibres. Yes, I am. Yeah, so that's fine. That's okay. But they all feel gorgeous, and actually the Ducky Darlings, I'd not used her yarns before, and that feels super squishy and wonderful, so definitely worth checking out. So we are on to the first of the draws of the Stash Cal 2019. Ba, 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 ba. I apologise, I really shouldn't do things like that. So the first draw I made was on the Chatter thread. Now in all cases, the draws that I'm doing, I'm using random number generator from the Ravelry forum threads. No, thread posts. And in order to claim your prize, please contact me on Ravelry to let me know that you've seen this and you know that you're the winner. Now on the Chatter thread, the prize is patterns which I will send you electronically via Ravelry, and that's pattern/patterns up to a value of $10 US. So if you could message me and let me know the pattern or patterns that you're interested in, then I can get those to you, and that will be great. I'm recording this on Thursday the 28th, and as I'm away this weekend, if you do contact me during this weekend, the last weekend of March 2019, don't feel I'm ignoring you if I don't reply until next week, just because I'm not around, and where I'm going it's a bit no news, no shoes. So it'll be a no phones, no digital anything kind of place. So if you can let me know that you're the winner. With the other prize for the FO thread, if you can again message me on Ravelry to let me know you've seen this and let me have a mailing address for you, then I can get your prize in the post to you. So Chatter thread first of all, like I say, your prize is pattern/patterns to value of $10. So if you've got a couple that are $5 each, more than welcome to have both. That would be absolutely marvellous. So just let me know what you'd like and I'll be delighted to get that to you. I used random number generator, and I went between numbers 2 because number 1 was me starting the thread, and number 397. And random number generator came up with 367, which is Laura C 49. I'll put that on screen. And her contribution to the Chatter thread was a picture of some socks that she's working on. Now with the Chatter thread, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be taking part. You can just be on there saying, oh, I really like that item, or what's the pattern for this, or anything like that. It just happens that in this case, it was a picture of the socks that this knitter has started. So thank you very much for taking part. Please get in contact via Ravelry and I'll get the pattern/patterns to you. The FO thread, I have some super lovely prizes and I feel a bit guilty because I've been given both of these, but they are super gorgeous. So the first is this wonderful project bag, and it says on it, handmade with love. This was made by Amy of New Jersey. I think I mentioned it in the last podcast. She very kindly offered to send this project bag. It's a zip bag, handle there, and it's made of scraps of fabric because she said she didn't have quite enough to make a whole bag. Thank you very much. It is beautifully, I mean, the stitching on it is fantastic. The piping there, the detail, it's a lovely thing. So thank you so much, Amy, for that. Really do appreciate it very much. And this will be going to a lucky winner. And thank you to another Amy for the other part of the prize. And that is the wonderful Amy from Stranded Dye Works, who I know because we go to the same knitting group. And she very kindly offered a prize for the giveaway, so thank you so much. I noticed actually she has entered, she's put in some stuff. She's not buying any yarn until she goes to SSK in the summer, so she's actually entering into the make along. And it did occur to me she might win her yarn back, but in this case she hasn't because I've already pulled the number. But the lovely Amy, thank you so much for donating. She's donated a couple of skeins of yarn, and I'm doing one this quarter and another one will be later on. So it might be next quarter, it might be for a bigger bundle at the end of the year. Haven't yet decided. The yarns were picked out by her wonderful house elf, her mum, Mary, who is just the loveliest person. So thank you both very much. And this is just such a beautiful spring colour that I thought this was the perfect time to give this away. So this is Stranded Dye Works Merino DK, 100% superwash Merino DK, and it's her Circus Tent colourway. So I don't know if you can see that. If I get my head out of the way, it's coming up pretty accurately. It's a beautiful rich yellow but tonal, so you've got these brighter spots. It is lovely and it feels pretty special too. So thank you, Amy Florence. Thank you, Amy, who made the bag. You are very, very kind. So this will be your prize, and I will put in some sweet treats as well. And I put into random number generator, 2, again because I'd done post number 1, to 589, and I'm just staggered at the number of people taking part. Thank you all so much. It is fantastic. I'm delighted to see all of you using up your stash, and I hope that means you're making lots of room in your cupboards to buy new stash, because new stash is important. But the programme pulled out number 406, and that's, I'm going to pronounce this Zoe I, and she posted up her 13 Memories socks, and they are rather special. I'm going to put a picture of them here. And she made those during February, so a lovely project. Thank you so much. Please contact me via Ravelry, let me know the postal address for you, and I'll get those items in the post to you next week. Thank you so much. The reason why I make a point of saying that she made them during February is that I have noticed a few items on the thread that were started before the beginning of this year. And so I did just check that this was a valid entry, and it is. So yeah, just to recap on the rules, the stash had to be in your stash before the 31st of December, and the project had to be started 1st of January 29 or later. So Zoe I, beautiful pair of socks. I think she used up scraps for them, and they look really lovely. So thank you very much. Congratulations on being the lucky number drawn out by random computer algorithms. Get in touch and I'll get those lovely things in the post to you. I think that's it for this month. So thank you everyone, as always, for watching. I am slightly confused as to why you'd want to, frankly, but sorry, that's a bit of a lurch. But no, I'm just so grateful that you spend time in this little corner of the world, of the internet, Sussex, all those things. So thank you very much. Lovely to hear from you either on Ravelry, on Instagram, excuse me, in the comments below. I'm always delighted to hear from you, and I'm so grateful that people take the time to just get in touch. So thank you. Oh, it means the world. I hope you all have a good month. April, not sure what it's bringing actually. My dad's birthday, but that happens every April. So I think I'm going to get all my hair cut off tomorrow, so the next time you see me I might look a bit more sleek, because this is getting on my nerves, and as we get towards summer I think I need to go a bit shorter, so I might go for something dramatic. Or not. Nothing too world shattering going on, hopefully. Don't really want the world shattered. But yeah, I just hope you're all keeping well, keeping crafting. I hope you're finding time to do the things that you love, and that everything you do brings you joy. Thank you so much. See you in a month's time. Thank you.